When a UFC match ends in less than a minute, you can't help but think it could have been fixed. Well, here are some fights that were accused of being fixed. For instance, when Don Frye versed Mark Hall. In the early days, defeating their opponents in several bouts was essential to winning in the UFC tournaments. And so, for fighters to be victorious, protecting their health and avoiding overexertion were keys. If you keep that in mind, any fight that was over quickly was obviously beneficial. That's why Don Frye's semi-final victory over Mark Hall with an Achilles lock at the 1996 Ultimate Championship stunned many people. Y'all want to know how long it took him? 20 freaking seconds. That's right. But with a win like that, rumors of the match being fixed were inevitable. Word was going around that Frye's manager had planned with Hall before the fight to get Hall to dive. You might be wondering why. Well, that way, the Predator could go up against Tank Abbott in the tournament final. But in a later interview, Frye did defend himself. He said that he slapped the Achilles lock tightly and that it wasn't true that Hall had dived. If you thought this one was fixed, wait till you hear about the controversial fight between Rich Franklin and Ken Shamrock, paired together in the first final back in 2005, and it looked like the UFC clearly intended for rising star Rich Franklin to take the torch from fading icon Ken Shamrock. What happened though makes it seem true. Ace finished off Shamrock in the first round with a TKO, and soon after, rumors spread that the promotion had bribed the world's most dangerous man to put over Franklin by intentionally diving on him. Yikes, talk about an accusation like that. But Shamrock didn't exactly seem stunned. Instead, he took advantage of the confusion to lock up a heel hook attempt, which means that it wasn't a dive, now was it? Instead, it looked like Shamrock was attempting a diving leg lock. End of the day, it was likely that Shamrock was overmatched by a significantly better prepared opponent at the end of his career. At least, there's some excuse for this one, because Leo Kuntz and Taehyun Bang might just take the cake. Unlike the rest of the fights on this list, their lightweight bout at UFC Fight Night 2015 was more than shady. Back then, there didn't seem to be much wrong with the fight, which ended in a split decision victory for Bang. But get this, only a year and a half later, the MMA community was caught off guard. Why, you ask? It's because Bang was given a 10-month prison sentence in South Korea for allegedly accepting a bribe to throw the fight with Kuntz. Apparently, 3 brokers had allegedly paid $92,160 to the Supernatural to throw the fight. And guess what he did with it? The fighter went ahead and set half the bribe on Kuntz. But before he could go through with it, something made him reconsider, and he eventually pulled off the victory. And that didn't stop the accusations from flying in, just like we've seen in light of Oleg Tagtarov's fight against Anthony Macias. If Don Frye's manager bribed Mark Hall to take a dive to leave his fighter fresh for a tournament final with Tank Abbott, chances are he might have taken inspiration from the UFC 6 incident. At that event, Oleg Tagtarov submitted Anthony Macias with a guillotine choke in just 9 seconds, and created a promotion record that has yet to be broken. It's one of the most disputed fights in UFC history. The fresh Tagtarov claimed victory over a tired Abbott, which sent him straight to the tournament final. The match might have been over, but the rumors had just begun. Many believe that Tagtarov and Macias' manager instructed the Pitbull to ensure that Tagtarov won. Then there's the fact that Macias was more known as a kickboxer than a grappler, so it made no sense that he went for a takedown so early in the fight, just like this one, between Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez.
I run New York. I run this whole shit. And Mystic Mac predicts I'm gonna KO you inside 1 round.
Everyone knows that Conor McGregor's lightweight title victory over Eddie Alvarez at UFC 205 was a knockout. And not just any knockout, it was one of the biggest in the promotion's history. McGregor repeatedly dropped the Underground King before finishing him early in the second round.
This counter, boom, over the top, on the jaw, right hand, and a big one to the temple.
But the Irishman's great rival, Khabib Nurmagomedov, wasn't satisfied by what went down. In a bizarre interview before his fight with Tony Ferguson in 2017, the Eagle said that he didn't understand McGregor versus Alvarez, and he considered his fight with El Kakoi to be the true title bout. And the reason is that the Dagestani claimed that he caught Alvarez falling down a couple times. That to him was a fake fight. Ouch, that's gotta hurt for McGregor. Khabib later claimed claimed that a lot of people had questions about the fight, and yet no evidence has ever surfaced to prove that Alvarez dove or that his fight with McGregor was manipulated. Khabib's claims are more evidence of his contempt for the notorious than anything else. And with that, we can shift our focus to the ongoing UFC betting.
A lot of pressure on Mendez. Rip into the body, drops him. That's it.
Most people would say that the featherweight fight between Shailan Nurmagomedov and Darrick Minner on November 5th wasn't an interesting one. Yet strangely, the UFC betting odds for that fight changed drastically in the hours leading up to the fight. And that's because most bookies opened Nurmagomedov as a slight betting favorite at -200, but those odds were up to -450 by the time the bout began. Any betting person would tell you just how unusual that is.
Also have Brogan and Brixton, so...
The line movement was weird to say the least, as most sports books didn't expect the fight to gain much interest. People were betting on Nurmagomedov to win, but it wasn't just that. It was also that a strangely high proportion of them were betting on him to win early, via TKO or knockout. And that was odd because all three of his prior UFC fights had gone to decision.
Up the middle for Shailan.
Oh, he hurt himself.
That was bad.
Throw in the fact that James Krause was Minner's trainer, and things start to get even more messed up. US Integrity launched an investigation into the fight, but what did the UFC president have to say about the incident? Well, he initially dismissed the controversy altogether, saying that it wasn't possible at all. However, later on, when the FBI got involved, only then did he realize that this was very serious. He commented that this is a crime that could send you to federal prison. It's not worth the money you get from it.
If I penalize them, you get cut. They're going to go to federal prison. Federal prison.
On top of that, Krause had his license suspended, and both fighters have been suspended until further notice. And it's had a negative impact everywhere, with many sportsbook companies not taking UFC bets.
Nicely right. Dale gets us down. Volkanovski looking to finish things.
The New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement was the first to stop sportsbooks in that state from taking UFC bets, specifically those in which James Krause was a trainer, coach, promoter, or fighter. In December, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, AGCO, also banned wagering on UFC fights. The AGCO is currently taking remedial steps to deal with this ongoing situation, and once that's done, the operators can show that UFC bets or betting products meet the registrar's standards. The decision was made keeping in mind that the UFC doesn't exactly prohibit all insiders from placing bets. Following Ontario, Alberta was the second Canadian province to ban UFC betting. And almost similar to AGCO, the Alberta Gaming, Liquor, and Cannabis is closely monitoring the situation. Once they are sure that the UFC regulatory bodies are effectively protecting their fighter, they'll resume the bets on Play Alberta. Those were some of the UFC fights that were accused of being fixed. See you in the next one.